Chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That feeling you have been carrying for the last few days, the one that keeps pulling at the back of your mind like something is unresolved, like someone is thinking about you, stop pushing it down. Because it is not paranoia, it is perception. There is a conversation happening right now that involves your name, not your reputation in the abstract, not some vague whisper in passing. A serious, deliberate, weighted conversation, where someone sat down, looked another person in the eye, and said your name out loud. And the stars, the very architecture of heaven, have already recorded why. But here is what the enemy does not want you to understand. He does not want you to know the nature of that conversation. Because the moment you know what is actually being said about you, the narrative he built in your mind collapses entirely. The accuser has spent this entire week planting a very specific version of that conversation in your thoughts. He has been whispering that it is negative, that someone is against you, that someone finally said out loud the worst thing you feared they believed about you. That is the lie, and today I am risking everything to break it. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. The Most High did. This is a divine appointment that was written before you knew you needed it. Stay until the very last second, because in the next few minutes I am going to reveal the full nature of that conversation and who is having it. I am going to show you the exact moment this week where you shifted something in the spirit without even knowing it. And at the end, I am going to give you the declaration that aligns you with what heaven has already decreed about your name. Do not leave early. The version of you that has been praying for a sign, this is where they arrive. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. There has been a weight in the atmosphere around you that you cannot fully explain. It is not sadness exactly. It is not anxiety exactly. It is something heavier and more specific than either of those words. Maybe you found yourself going quiet in a room full of people this week, not because you had nothing to say, but because something inside you kept telling you to watch, to observe, to wait. Or maybe you woke up at 3:00 in the morning with an image of someone's face already in your mind before you were even fully conscious, and you lay there in the dark wondering what it meant, wondering if they were thinking of you in that same moment. Or maybe it was something even quieter than that. Maybe you simply felt seen this week in a way you could not explain, like eyes you could not locate were tracking your path with intention. That was not your imagination running loose. That was spiritual awareness announcing itself. You are floating right now in that suspended place between what was and what has been promised. And in that space, the enemy has been very busy. He has been whispering that the reason your name came up in that conversation is because of a mistake you made. He has been replaying a specific moment in your mind. Maybe the moment you went silent when you should have spoken. Maybe the moment you stepped back when you could have stepped forward. Maybe the moment you protected your peace instead of performing for someone else's comfort. The accuser has been telling you that was weakness, that it made you look small, that it is precisely why people are talking. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Proverbs 22:1 says, "A good name is more desirable than great riches, and to be esteemed is better than silver or gold." Listen to what that promise is actually saying. Your name has value that was assigned before the conversation even started. The weight of what is being said about you was not determined by your last move or your last silence or your last choice to walk away with dignity. It was established in the spirit long before any room held that discussion. The enemy needs you to believe you are the subject of criticism, so you will shrink, so you will go back, so you will compromise the boundary you just set, or the silence you just maintained, or the door you just refused to reopen. He is trying to use the idea of that conversation as a hook to drag you backward. But here is the verdict. That conversation is not what he told you it was. The heaviness you have been feeling is not the pressure of judgment falling on you. It is the weight of recognition rising toward you. There is a difference, and your spirit already knows which one this is. Think back to that moment this week when you chose restraint, when you had every reason to react and you did not, when you had every opportunity to explain yourself and you stayed silent instead. When you walked away from something that would have cost you more than it gave you, you thought that was a loss. You questioned yourself in the car ride home or in the quiet of your bedroom that night, wondering if you had been too passive, too distant, too guarded. But let me reframe your reality right now. That restraint was not weakness. That silence was not surrender. That was a decree written in the spirit the moment you made it. That was the act that elevated your name in rooms you never entered. That was the move that started the conversation. The heaviness you feel is not punishment, it is preparation. It is the sensation of something significant settling into position. It is the weight that comes right before a door swings open so wide that you will never again question whether your name carries power. You are not starting over. You are not running laps around the same wilderness. You are finishing, and I need you to hear what I'm about to say before your mind tries to rationalize it away. Because the conversation happening about you right now, in the unseen, in the spiritual, in the very chambers of heaven, it is not casual, it is not coincidental, and it is certainly not finished. Some messages don't just inform, they activate. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, you may be ready to receive the Chosen One's blueprint. This sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. It also comes with the full audiobook, so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or quiet moments with God. And for those called to speak His truth, you'll also receive Activating Your Prophet Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those carrying a prophetic assignment. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Now let me tell you what's really going on. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for a sign, waiting for confirmation, waiting for someone to look them in the eyes and say, "You are not crazy. What you felt was real. What you sensed was true. What you've been carrying in secret is actually sacred." And the reason they wait so long is not because the signs weren't there. It's because they were taught, slowly, quietly, systematically, to distrust the very thing inside them that knows. They were schooled in the art of doubt, their inner knowing gradually dulled by the insistent whispers of external validation. This systematic erosion of self-trust creates a deep chasm, a spiritual deficit that leaves individuals adrift, constantly seeking anchors in a world that often feels unstable. The signs were never absent. They were merely obscured by the fog of learned self-doubt, like stars hidden behind a persistent cloud cover. That's the barrier. That is the unseen wall. Not the enemy outside of you, not the people who walked away, not the doors that closed. The barrier is the slow erosion of trust in your own divine perception. It's the internal exile from your own intuitive wisdom. This isn't an external battle against formidable forces, nor a passive reaction to the perceived failings of others or the closed pathways before you. The true impediment is the gradual decay of faith in your own God-given senses, the dimming of the inner compass that navigates the spiritual realm. And until that is restored, you will keep standing at the threshold of your purpose, wondering why you can't seem to cross it, like a traveler before an impenetrable mist, unable to discern the path ahead. Think of Elijah, standing at the mouth of the cave on Mount Horeb. He had just called down fire from heaven. He had just outrun a chariot in the power of God. He had commanded the very elements, a testament to his divine connection and authority. And then one threatening word from one woman, Jezebel, a whisper of malice, sent him running into a wilderness, a desolate place reflecting his inner landscape, lying under a tree, asking to die. Not because the power left him, not because God abandoned him. His supernatural strength remained, a residual echo of divine encounter. But because his perception of himself had been shattered, his identity had fractured under the weight of a single threat, revealing the fragility of his self-image. He could see God's power operating through him and still believe he was the only one left. He could witness celestial intervention and still feel utterly alone, a solitary flicker in a vast darkness. Still believe it was over. The very prophet who had just witnessed the miraculous could not see what heaven already knew, that 7,000 had never bowed. 7,000 were still standing, a hidden army of faithful hearts, a testament to God's enduring presence. He just couldn't see them from inside his cave, his self-imposed sanctuary of despair. His internal vision was so clouded by his own perceived failure that the reality of God's unseen network was rendered invisible. And that cave is where so many of you are right now. Not in defeat, in hiding. There's a difference. Defeat means it's over, a pronouncement of finality, a closed chapter. Hiding means you still have something worth protecting. It's a strategic retreat, a place of preservation. And the Most High doesn't send angels to people who have nothing left, no spark remaining. He sent an angel to Elijah twice, touched him, fed him, ministered to his physical and spiritual needs, and then said, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you." The path ahead requires sustenance, not just solace. Not too great for God, too great for you in your current state. This is the divine assessment, a compassionate acknowledgement of his depleted state. And that is the most compassionate thing heaven could say to someone mid-collapse. Not pull yourself together, a command that often falls on deaf ears when the foundations are shaking. Not, "Why are you here?" Well, he did ask that, a gentle inquiry into the heart of the matter. But listen to what Elijah said in response. He didn't give a spiritual answer, a platitude to mask his pain. He gave an honest one. He said, "I have been very zealous. I did everything right. I fulfilled my assignments with fervent devotion, and I'm the only one left." He perceived himself as the sole survivor in a spiritual war, a testament to his perceived failure. "And they're trying to kill me." The threats still loomed, magnifying his sense of isolation and impending doom. He was exhausted. The emotional and spiritual drain had taken its toll. He was disoriented. His inner compass spun wildly, unable to find true north. He had confused his loneliness for abandonment. The absence of visible support was interpreted as God's deliberate withdrawal. And God didn't rebuke him. He met him in his brokenness with tangible provision. God fed him and told him the truth. You are not alone, and this is not the end. The whispers of despair were met with the resounding truth of divine presence and an unfolding future. The conversation heaven was having about Elijah in that moment was not a eulogy, not a lament for a fallen hero. It was a commissioning. It was preparation for the next assignment, a divine recalibration for the road ahead. And the conversation happening about you right now, it's the same. It echoes Elijah's pivotal moment, a divine dialogue about your unfolding destiny, irrespective of your current perceived state. But here's where it goes deeper. The reason most people miss what heaven is saying about them is because they're listening to the wrong frequency. See, there are two conversations happening simultaneously in the spirit. Imagine the spiritual realm as a vast radio spectrum, filled with countless signals. One is the conversation God is having about your destiny. This is the celestial broadcast carrying the frequencies of purpose, potential, and divine orchestration. The other is the conversation your wounds are having about your worth. This is the static and interference, the distorted transmissions born from past hurts, fears, and insecurities, and they sound nothing alike. One says you are set apart, prepared, and about to be sent. It broadcasts clarity, potential, and divine endorsement. The other says you are too broken, too late, and too much of a risk. It transmits doubt, limitation, and self-condemnation. And the problem isn't that you can't tell the difference intellectually. Your mind can grasp the contrast, can analyze the differing messages. The problem is that one of those voices has been speaking to you for so long that it sounds like your own. The voice of your wounds has become so deeply ingrained, so intimately familiar, that it has usurped the authentic voice of your spirit, masquerading as your own thoughts and feelings. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share next is the part that breaks the cycle. This is the key that unlocks the prison of familiar falsehoods. The voice that sounds most familiar is not always the voice that carries the most authority. Familiarity is not the same as truth. The comfort of the known can be a deceptive siren song, lulling us into a false sense of security while leading us away from our true north. And this is the place where so many chosen ones get stuck. Not because they stopped believing in God, but because they started agreeing with a narrative that God never authored. They become complicit in the lies whispered by their past. You've been rehearsing a story about yourself. Maybe it started with something someone said when you were young, a carelessly thrown word that lodged itself deep within your psyche. Maybe it started with a loss that didn't make sense, a sudden void that left you questioning your place. Maybe it started the moment you began to sense something greater in you, a divine spark, and someone or something immediately showed up to dismantle it, to extinguish that nascent flame before it could catch fire, because that's how it works. The attack always comes in proportion to the assignment. The enemy, or simply the circumstances of life, recognizes the magnitude of your potential and unleashes resistance accordingly. David wasn't just a shepherd boy who happened to win a fight. He was a king in the making, his lineage and anointing already established in the divine blueprint. He was being prepared in obscurity for a throne that hadn't even been vacated yet. The lion and the bear came before Goliath. These were not random encounters designed to break him. They were divine apprenticeships, opportunities to hone his courage, his skill, and his reliance on God. Not to destroy him, to develop him. The wilderness is always a prerequisite. The pressure is always preparation. The pressure is always preparation. It's the forge in which resilience is hammered out, but you can't see that from inside it. From inside it, it just feels like suffering without meaning, an endless expanse of hardship with no discernible purpose. And this brings us to something most people miss entirely. Meaning is not given to you at the beginning of the process. It is not a pre-packaged revelation handed out of the outset. It is revealed at the end of it. It's the wisdom gained from looking back at the winding path, the understanding that blossoms from the completed journey. Which means you cannot wait for the meaning before you move through the difficulty. You cannot pause your progress until clarity descends. You have to trust the hand of the one who already sees the end from the beginning. Abraham didn't know where he was going when he left Ur of the Chaldees. He was stepping into an unknown future, a vast expanse of uncertainty. He just knew who was leading. He followed the voice, the divine directive, with unwavering commitment. And the text says he went out, not knowing where he was going. And God counted that as faith. Not certainty, faith. Faith is the currency of the spiritual realm, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. There's a version of you that has been waiting for a guarantee before you take the next step, a demand for absolute certainty, a signed contract from heaven. But heaven has never operated that way. The guarantee comes after the step. The parting of the Red Sea didn't happen before Israel stepped toward it. It happened when their feet touched the water, when they committed to the seemingly impossible act of obedience, bridging the physical and the divine through their courage. And what's coming next will likely surprise you. It always does. Divine transitions rarely unfold according to our meticulously crafted human plans. Because here's where the conversation about you takes an unexpected turn. You've been praying for doors to open. You've been knocking, seeking entry, envisioning the opportunities that lie beyond. And some of those doors have remained closed. They stand stubbornly shut, unyielding to your pleas. And you've interpreted that closure as rejection, as divine silence, as confirmation of your greatest fear, that maybe you misheard. Maybe you misheard. Maybe you misheard. Maybe it wasn't real. The subtle nudges of your spirit were simply figments of your imagination. But what if the closed doors were not God ignoring your prayer? What if they were God answering it in a way your current capacity couldn't yet receive? What if the closed door was a divine redirection, a protective measure, a necessary detour towards a greater destination? Joseph's closed door was a pit, a literal dark, suffocating pit, a place of betrayal and abandonment. And that pit became the path to Egypt, a place of temporary servitude, a stepping stone. And Egypt became the path to the palace, his rise to unparalleled power and influence, not in spite of the pit through it. The pit was not a deviation from his destiny, but an integral part of its unfolding. Every single closed door was a directional redirect that his destiny required. It was an adjustment of the trajectory, a course correction orchestrated by divine intelligence. You can't get to where Joseph ended up by skipping the pit. To bypass the hardship would be to bypass the preparation, the character development, the very crucible that forged his strength and wisdom. The trajectory demands the path. And the path includes the places that felt like punishment, but were actually positioning. They were not arbitrary trials, but strategic placements designed to equip him for the role he was destined to fulfill. Now, once you understand that, you're ready for this. This next layer of revelation demands a shift in perspective. The next layer of the transformation isn't about what you need to receive. It's not about acquiring new blessings or external validations. It's about what you need to release. It's about shedding the dead weight that hinders your ascension. Because you have been carrying agreements, silent, unspoken, deeply embedded agreements with things that were never true about you. These are covenanters made in the heart, often unconsciously, with destructive narratives and limiting beliefs. Agreements with rejection, agreements with smallness, agreements with the idea that your suffering means you are cursed rather than chosen. These are the quiet pacts that bind your potential, whispering limitations into your soul. And those agreements are not abstract. They are woven into the fabric of your being, manifesting in tangible ways. They are woven into the way you speak about yourself, the self-deprecating remarks and the muted pronouncements of your worth. The way you shrink in rooms where you were meant to stand tall, contracting your presence as if to apologize for taking up space. The way you apologize for your gifts as though your anointing is an inconvenience to others, a burden rather than a blessing. Ruth didn't apologize for gleaning in Boaz's field. She was a foreigner, a widow, in a land not her own. Yet she approached the opportunity with humility and diligence. She asked for permission, yes, a recognition of the established order, but she came. She showed up. She worked in a field that wasn't hers yet, under a covering that hadn't fully formed yet, in a land that wasn't her home. And she did not shrink from it. She faced the uncertainty with courage and unwavering commitment. She pressed into the provision available to her in that season, even when the season hadn't fully turned, even when the full measure of her future provision was not yet apparent. And Boaz noticed not just her presence, but her posture. He saw her inherent dignity, her industrious spirit, her unwavering grace. He said, "I've been told all you've done. Your reputation has preceded you, and everything you sacrificed has been seen. Your dedication, your resilience, your quiet strength has not gone unnoticed. Heaven has seen everything you've sacrificed, every dream you held in silence because the room wasn't safe, because the air was too thick with judgment. Every prayer you cried in private because you didn't know who would understand, because the depth of your longing felt too vast for human ears. Every night you kept going when stopping felt like the only logical option, when exhaustion threatened to consume you entirely. It has all been seen, recorded. Every act of faith, every silent tear, every moment of perseverance has been noted in the divine ledger. And it is not being ignored. It is being rewarded in a season that is closer than it appears. The harvest is ripening, and your faithfulness is about to be recognized. But let me challenge you with something right now, because we are entering the place in this message where the real confrontation begins. This is where we confront the subtle deceivers, the hidden roadblocks that masquerade as something holy. In just a moment, we're going to uncover what's been hidden in plain sight, the one thing that's been quietly feeding your delay while disguising itself as something holy. It's a subtle thief of destiny, cloaked in piety. Most people who are called and gifted and spiritually perceptive develop one particular tendency over time. It's a common pitfall for those walking a path of spiritual sensitivity. And it sounds like wisdom. It functions like discernment. It gets validated by the church, by spiritual community, by well-meaning voices in your life. It carries the weight of perceived spiritual maturity, but it is not what it appears to be. It's this, the tendency to wait in a way that has crossed the line from trust into avoidance. It's a passive stance that has morphed into a form of spiritual stagnation. You call it surrender. You frame it as yielding to God's will. but the Most High calls it hesitation, dressed in theological language. It's a holy excuse for inaction. You say you're waiting on God, but God has already spoken. His directives have been issued, His invitations extended. The question is whether you're willing to move with what He said, or whether you're going to keep building altars at the foot of the mountain instead of climbing it. You offer sacrifices of waiting, of petition, of contemplation, but you refuse the call to ascend, to engage, to step into the assignment. Moses stood at the burning bush and made 5 objections before he took the assignment. 5. He presented a litany of reasons why he was unfit, why the task was impossible. The man who would become the deliverer of an entire nation tried 5 different times to explain to God why he was the wrong choice, and God met every objection with provision, not with frustration, with provision. He offered solutions, reassurance, and divine empowerment. But there came a point where the text says God's anger burned against Moses, not because Moses doubted. God understood the weight of the task and the fear it invoked, but because Moses was using his doubt to stall. He was employing his perceived shortcomings as a shield against obedience. And there's something in you right now that God's patience has been waiting on, not waiting to give you the sign you're seeking, waiting for you to stop demanding a sign and start walking toward the assignment He has already illuminated. He's waiting for you to move beyond the questioning and into the doing. Here's the part no one wants to hear, and this is the insight that changes everything. So stay with me. This truth can feel uncomfortable, like a necessary surgery that brings healing. The thing that has been blocking you isn't the enemy. It isn't your past, the weight of historical burdens. It isn't even the people who hurt you, or the system that overlooked you, or the delay that has stretched longer than it should have. Those are real, those are valid. They are tangible obstacles and emotional scars, but they are not the root. They are symptoms, not the source. The root, and this is the unexpected truth of this entire message, the root is a misidentified version of yourself that you have been protecting. There is an old identity built in the place of pain, a persona forged in the fires of adversity that has become comfortable to you, not happy, comfortable. It's the familiar landscape of your suffering, the known territory of your limitations. It's familiar. And the new thing God is asking you to step into requires the death of that old identity, not the suppression of it, not a mere modification, but the profound, unequivocal death of it. It requires a spiritual resurrection into something new. This is what Paul meant when he said, "I die daily." Not dramatic self-destruction, not a spectacle of suffering. Daily surrender of the version of yourself that was formed in survival mode. It's a moment-by-moment release of the self that was designed to just get through, because the person you became in the wilderness was built to endure the wilderness. They developed the skills of resilience, of scarcity, of protection. But that same person, if they don't evolve, if they don't shed that survival skin, will also sabotage the promised land, because the promised land requires a different kind of person. It requires someone who knows how to receive, not just endure. Someone who understands abundance and grace. Someone who knows how to lead, not just survive. Someone who can stand in fullness, occupying their divinely appointed space without apology, without waiting for an external authority to give them permission to occupy the space God already assigned them. It's about stepping into inherent authority and inherent worth. And once that clicks, and it may be clicking right now, a profound resonance within your spirit, everything shifts. The paradigm changes, the internal landscape transforms, because the conversation heaven has been having about you was never about whether you were qualified. It was never about whether you were worthy based on human metrics. It was about the moment you would finally agree with what God said about you from the beginning. It was about aligning your internal narrative with His eternal truth. Before the wounds came, before the labels were placed upon you by the world, before the silence of unanswered prayers made you wonder if you were seen at all, the Most High saw you before you were formed, knew your name before you were named, etched in the very fabric of creation, wrote the chapters of your life before you lived a single day of it, Your story was divinely authored before you ever turned the first page, and none of what you've been through has changed that. Not one word of what he wrote has been erased. Not one promise has expired. The delay was never abandonment. The desert was never rejection. The fire was never punishment. The fire was refinement. It was the purification process, burning away the dross, leaving behind the precious metal. And what comes out of fire, what survives fire, is what's real. What's left when everything else burns away is the pure thing, the true thing. The version of you that heaven has been calling by name since before time. It is the essence of your divine design, the unadulterated spirit that God breathed into existence. Place your hand on your heart and declare this with me. Speak these truths into your being and let them resonate through your soul. I release every agreement I made with rejection. I release every label that was placed on me by hands that did not create me. I release the version of myself that was built to survive what was never meant to define me. I step into the identity that was written before I was born. I trust the process that I do not fully understand. I believe that the delay was not denial. I believe that the suffering was not the end of the story. I believe that the conversation heaven is having about me is one of purpose, of destiny, and of divine appointment. I am not behind. I am not forgotten. I am not too late. I am exactly where the Most High positioned me for the breakthrough that is already in motion. I am seen, I am chosen, and I am chosen, and I am ready. If this message reached something in you today, don't let it pass without action. Let it be a catalyst for your transformation. Share it with someone whose name came to your mind while you were watching. Be an extension of this divine message. Leave a comment below with the word chosen, because your declaration matters in the spirit, not just in the physical. It reverberates through the unseen realms. And if you want to go deeper into understanding why your life has unfolded exactly the way it has, the link in the first pinned comment holds the next step of your journey. It's waiting for you, and so is everything God promised you before you ever knew to ask.